Hello, Player One. Welcome to the Gaming History Club. My name is Gabby.
Hello, and I'm JP. Before matchmaking algorithms existed and before swiping left and right on your dating app was even a thing, there was a video game genre that dared to ask the question, what if love could be coded? Let's dive into the surprisingly rich history of dating sims. So, Gabby, when you hear people talking about video games, what kind of genres usually come to mind?
I don't know, first person shooter, I guess, or platformer, adventure?
Something where you have to beat the bad guys, huh?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, what about games where the challenge is more to win your love interest's attention and affection, though? Not in real life, but your love interest in the game, I mean.
Yeah, I think you know what? This kind of genre actually reminds me a little bit about rhythm games when we delve into rhythm games back then. It feels like it's not what comes to mind the first thing you heard the word video games somehow. But it definitely is a very legit video games
As
genre.
as Fatboy Slim said, if you don't walk with rhythm, you won't attract the women.
Okay. So this is the attract the women part.
That's right.
Okay, go on.
So, dating sims or romance simulation games. In Japanese, they're called Renai Shimureshun Gemu. And it's a subgenre of simulation games, but yeah, obviously with romantic elements. You depend a lot on statistics in dating sims, as that's your main game mechanic basically. You improve your stats to achieve certain goals. I think it's quite funny because it feels like you make something abstract like love into something more tangible, right? With stats and breaking it down into like a step by step how to do this. For example, if you're interested in this sporty girl in your class, you have to focus your day to day by being better at sports while still remember to study, sleep, eat, etc. It is just like simulating real life.
To be fair, it is a branch of life simulation games, which makes sense.
Did you ever decide to be good at sports just to impress somebody?
No,
Yeah, same. No.
can't be bothered.
Dating sims usually involve a lot of dialogues in the game, which require you to say just the right thing at the right time. Another thing is that you have to be smart with your time management. There's only so much you can do in one day with so little time you can use to win your love interest's attention. So, using the example of the sporty girl in your class before, if you do just the sports all day long to win her heart and you neglect your studies, for example, you might be expelled, and that's having huge consequences to your plan, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, people get mistaken thinking that dating sims and visual novels are the same thing. Don't get me wrong, some of the artistic style might be very similar. Both can revolve around the theme of romance. The main difference is actually in the gameplay mechanic itself, where dating sims are depending much on your stats and time management, like we said before, and visual novels more into combining textual narrative with either static or animation illustrations and having some sort of interactivity in it so you can still talk to them with like very limited branching. So yeah, with visual novels, they usually have multiple storylines and ending, which being done by picking from some multiple choices once in a while in the middle of like the single clicks you do to progress the narrative. And as mentioned before, dating sims games also contain those dialogue multiple choices, but it's not strictly just that, if
I
that makes
see.
sense.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
does make sense. So, like, the simulation basically means like you are doing more than just clicking forwards and then very rarely making a decision. You're strategizing.
Yeah, with dating sims, you definitely do strategize, and that's a big part of the game. Visual novels were also very popular in Japan, though, and probably still is. In Wikipedia, it even says that in 2006, they made up to 70% of PC games title released in that year. That is a lot.
Yeah, that is a large number. Well, I can see why perhaps some people may easily get confused between the visual novels and the dating sims because people like me are just not interested in playing that type of game usually. So you shove it into the same kind of like, oh, this doesn't interest me category, and so it all becomes the same mishmash for you. Incorrectly, of course, being like a little bit arrogant about it, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we'll delve into that a little bit deeper later. At first, I would totally understand why they look similar or why people perceive it as the same thing, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, so dating sims stemmed their presence in Japan, and they continue to be popular to this day, as you said, Gabi. But does it have anything to do with social life in Japan? Well, Japan's birth rate actually declined by 5.7% in the first 6 months of 2024, compared to the same period in 2023. More than 60% of Japanese between the age of 20 and 49 are not in a relationship in 2023, with 34% never having been in a relationship before whatsoever. More than 87% of the population aged between 24 and 35, and also 45 to 54-year-olds in Japan, are working by 2023. Even for the above 65-year-olds, in 2022, more than 25% of them are still in employment, much higher than the UK's rate, for example, with just about 10%. So I know that was a lot of stats to throw out there, but we can basically paint a general picture here that the social dating life in Japan is not as large, basically, as we in the West might be used to with our demographics.
It paints a picture where people are very work oriented in their day to day, putting career above their social life.
It comes to no surprise, they have like a world renowned work ethic, Japanese people, don't they? They are known to be hard workers. As we discussed in a previous episode about Japan's influence in video games, Japan portrays a lot of their culture and history with their art. For example, in the movie Godzilla, portraying the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with the message of, quote unquote, stop letting people die from nuclear weapons, please. And similarly, there's a correlation between dating sims and the culture in Japan as well, because there is a demand for it. There is a dream of love that might be less time intensive and more predictable to be had on your screen during your commute to and from work than spending a lot of time to balance relationships with work and dealing with the uncertainty of human emotions. I mean, can't focus on work if you don't even know if this girl really wants to see you tomorrow or not. Like, why even bother in the first place? I'll just talk to this screen instead and
Yeah.
strategize tangibly about my next move.
Yeah, fair enough, right? I mean, it's definitely easier than maintaining real life relationships. So
If only there was a real life strategy guide for dating in the real world, huh?
I know, right?
What am I talking about? There's plenty of stupid books that try and do that. Don't trust any of them, though.
But yeah, anyway, in the early 80s, Bishoujo games started to appear in Japan. So, what is Bishoujo game? It's basically like a choose your own adventure in terms of the narrative, but Bishoujo game in specific is the type of Japanese game that's centered on interactions with attractive girls. The first Bishoujo game commercialized in Japan is called Nightlife by Koi back in 1982. And no, we're not gonna talk about this game in particular because it's borderline pornographic, just like most Bishoujo games around this time in the early 80s. Other games like Sega's Girl Garden and GAST's Tenshitachi no Gogo were then released in 1985, which kind of had an element of dating sims, but both were more adventure games at heart, more than a dating sims game. The first true dating sim game that we know of didn't come until 1987. It's called Nakayama Miho no Tokimeki High School, or probably more well known as Tokimeki High School. So, to get into it a little bit, Tokimeki High School is the dating sim developed by Square with Nintendo R&D 1 team. The game was released on December 1st, 1987 for the Famicom Disk System and exclusively in Japan. Cool thing is, people who were involved in Tokimeki High School are actually well known ones in the video game history world. The first one is Hironobu Sakaguchi. He was the creator of Final Fantasy series, and he was one of the game designers of Tokimeki High School, together with Yoshio Sakamoto, who co-created Metroid.
So these guys work together on this game?
Yeah, apparently so, in a dating sim game.
Wow, imagine how frustrated they must have been with the process to like completely change direction and make Final Fantasy and Metroid games instead.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, the music for the game was composed by Nobuo Uematsu, who was also the composer for Final Fantasy, together with Toshiaki Imai, who was also involved in the sound production of Rat Racer and many more. The name Nakayama Miho at the start of the title actually refers to this Japanese singer and actress who was a huge star back then in the 80s. So, other than using her name, she actually also voice acted in a segment where you can call like a toll free number during gameplay, and also the character in the game is using her likeness. Sadly, Miho actually passed away in December 2024, so that was quite recent.
How old was she?
She was only 54 years old.
Ah, that's a yeah, that's early departure, isn't it? Sadly,
I
yeah.
would say so, yeah.
So, how does the game work? Well, the game itself is actually a standard text based command style, but with an added complication. During important scenes, not only do you have to choose the text, but you have to match your facial expression when answering as well. And you do that by choosing from four options: a straight face, one with laughter, one with sadness, and a face with anger. If your response is deemed incorrect, then it leads to a straight up game over.
A bit sadistic.
A little bit harsh.
Yeah,
The annoying thing is, as well, sometimes the correct answer is actually not matching what you think it would be, like choosing an answer that reflects like happiness, but somehow the correct expression was supposed to be a straight face. It's like, honestly, come on, guys. Like, roll eyes.
yeah.
Do they have a roll eyes expression? Because I'd use that one constantly. To talk about the story a little bit, though, you're playing as a boy joining Tokimeki High School, and you run into a girl who looks like the famous Nakayama Miho. And the game is where you try to win her heart, of course. It's a dating sim after all. The game has two different endings, depending on the choices that you make throughout the game, and you can get prizes receivable from the Disc Fax network that's different for each ending. So, what, a game with actual prizes? Wow, gives you gaming history club vibes all over it, doesn't it?
I
Huh?
know.
Who wants a SNES, guys, huh? Yeah, it's not the only cool thing about this game either, though. This game was developed in a 2 week period. This game was the third game compatible with the Disk Fax network for the disk system, somehow using blue floppy disks rather than the regular yellow ones. And although this wasn't the only game allowing you to upload your best score or best time on the Disk Fax network, it was the only game that would give prizes upon completion as well. So the Disk Fax service was used for this contest from December 1987 until February 1988, where 8,000 people won an autographed phone card if you finished the normal ending, and 8,000 people won a special VHS tape filled with Nakayama Miho's candid B roll. Pretty cool. There's a video on YouTube by Jeremy Parish who recorded the VHS and upscaled it. We've linked it in the description as well for anyone curious enough to find out what a price for a dating sim looked like back in the 80s.
I truly wish we have more games that give like actual gifts nowadays for like completing the game.
Imagine having a dating sim game where you have to date Keanu Reeves, and upon successful completion of your date with Keanu Reeves, you get assigned Keanu Reeves' baseball card.
Or I get a real date with Keanu Reeves.
Ha, in your dreams. You're lucky to get the sequel delivered to your house for free, I think.
I would still love that though. But yes, 5 years after Tokimeki High School in 1992, we had the release of Dokusei series. This one was made for the NEC PC 9801 microcomputer and developed by Elf Corporation. Just to give a bit of background, this wasn't Elf Corporation's first game. They already started in 1989 making eroge or erotic, or also known as H game. So yes, Dokusei series are pretty much adult themed. When the first Dokusei game was released, people realized that this one is a bit different than Tokimeki High School because your attention is not only directed to one girl, rather 14 possible love interests together with rivals. And yeah, it's just making it a lot more complicated than just getting the attention of Nakayama Miho. So, in this game, you're playing as a high school student in his last summer vacation, and somehow has 14 girls to pick from if the rival didn't get to them first, of course. You're actually encouraged to chase multiple love interests here. Building a love interest is not easy though. You have to uncover their personalities and character stories, and then also figure out the times of day someone will be in certain location.
I believe that's called stalking.
I know, right? But you apparently can go around making sure that they will be there during the time that you're there too.
Don't do this in real life, guys. That's all I'm saying.
I know, it sounds really creepy, but yeah. The game wants you to wander around town and you kind of meet those girls mostly by chance.
Yeah, a chance. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been following them after school for like the last 2 months, but yes, they are there by chance today.
The funny thing is, Dokyusei actually means classmates, but these girls are mostly not his classmates. The series was pretty popular though. Dokyusei was naturally also being made into an anime. It's just a natural follow up to that. Then they got a successor, Dokyusei 2, which also spawned both video games and anime again. Then they released a game called Kakyusei, which means lower classmates, and also Kakyusei 2. Just to paint a little picture of how popular they are, the first Dokusei was named sixth most popular Bishoujo games of the 20th century. Dokusei 2 was named the fifth most popular Bishoujo games, and Kakusei was 10th. So they made it to like the top 10. Anyway, we're not going to talk about all of the games one by one in the series because they're all pretty much kind of the same thing. But obviously, this is still a very popular series, spawning even remakes as recent as 2022 called Dokusei Bangin' Summer.
So remember when we said before that dating games and visual novels are quite similar, and people did mistakenly took them as like one and the same thing? Well, that's because it was kind of true. The early dating sims that we've spoken about, they were very text heavy, particularly due to technical limitations as well. But of course, as technology improved, they started to differentiate themselves from each other more and more. And here, the true stats dependent dating sims started to emerge.
Yeah, and enter Tokimeki Memorial in this era. This is probably the most famous dating sims franchise coming from a big publisher, Konami. This game was first released in 1994 for the NEC PC Engine's Super CD-ROM system.
Say that 10 times fast.
NEC PC Engine's Super CD-ROM system. I didn't say 10 times fast. But yeah, or better known in America as TurboGrafx X16. The game wasn't that big of a hit at first until it was being ported to PS1 a year later in 95 with the name of Tokimeki Memorial Forever with You. Before I properly get into Tokimeki Memorial, I just want to thank our favorite speedrunner Punchy, who made this very elaborate video about Tokimeki Memorial. We'll link that on the description, but if you're interested in Tokimeki Memorial after this episode, please do check out Punchy's video. It's definitely giving you a full flavor of the series. Especially, we don't really speak or read Japanese, and many of these weren't really translated to English. So I really thank Punchy fully for this entire Tokimeki Memorial section of this episode.
Yeah, we're lucky our favorite speedrunner is also well versed in Japanese.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, Tokimeki Memorial put you in the character of a Japanese student on his first year of high school, and you take him into 3 years of high school life. Just to clarify, in Japan, high school actually do last you 3 years, very different than England, who jump from primary school to high school that last like, what is it, 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah, so that's quite different. But anyway, within these 3 years, you raise your stats, you do activities, and the events will change throughout your game based on your decision and your stats. When your character joined Kirameki High School, you met this girl, Shiori Fujisaki, who was actually your childhood friend, but you slowly both drifted apart. Apparently, now she's the most popular girl in the school. As you can see, this is immediately introducing you to a potential love interest right from the get go.
Ah, interesting. So the childhood friend, as soon as she stops socializing with you, she becomes the most popular girl in school.
Yeah, but yeah, anyway, in the start of the story, the game also shows you this legendary tree in the school where if you confess your love under that tree to someone and you get together with them, you'll basically be inseparable.
So, how do the stats mechanics work in this game? Because, after all, this is what makes just dating sim a dating sim now. Well, on your screen, you will see a lot of numbers representing your stats at the top, and also a lot of icons on the left hand side of the screen showing activities that you can do. Some of them are, for example, studying literature, do some exercise, sleep, and many more. All these activities will affect your stats, so you can imagine it to be similar to when you're playing The Sims, for example, where you're doing exercise will make you tired, but then also increases your fitness level. It's kind of the same with Tokimeki Memorial. You gain some stats, but you might give away some other stats too in the process with certain activities. There's no such thing as a main storyline or anything within this game. It's completely depending on how you raise your stats and what you decide to do during your 3 years in the school. As mentioned before, your character meets Shiori on his first day, but he also meets Yoshio Saotome, who will become your best friend, and also Rei Ijuin, this snobby character who is the grandson of the school's chairman. Not a favorite character from the boys' perspective, but apparently he's very popular with the girls. So, is the girl option to be a romantic interest only Shiori in this game? Of course not. You'll need to do a lot of activities, such as joining clubs and things like that, where you meet even more girls that will be your potential romantic interest. You can schedule dates with them as well, so you can go on brief dates with them, where you'll talk with them and your answer will determine your level of affinity with these girls. But there are no stats that are readily available on your screen showing your level of relationship with the girls. But you can call your best friend, your Shio, and there you can check the girl's evaluation level on you or ask about their information, such as a phone number. Somehow Yoshio knows everyone's phone number. With the phone number, you can then schedule dates and get closer to them. This is what I think is super interesting about Tokimeki Memorial. Rather than the game letting you pursue just one relationship and ignoring the other girls, they have a bomb system. When you call Yoshio and get this evaluation level, which are basically the stats of how much they like you, there will be a bomb ready to explode beside the name of girls you've ignored or the ones you've not been pleasant with. You do not let that bomb explode because that means a bad ending, where they will spread rumors about you and affecting your relationships with someone you actually want to pursue in the game. So be careful. If you see a bomb next to someone's name, take them out on a nice date. Then it should save you from the bomb to start ruining your game. The crazy thing is, to get into the phone and call Yoshio to ask the relationship stats actually wasted an entire in game day, which means you have to be very strategic in how you're using the time. Tokimeki Memorial might look like a simple dating sim that's really cute, but it requires huge amounts of strategy when you play it. Remember the example about pursuing the sporty girl? It means you have to increase your sporty stats. And although academic stats might not be as important to her, it's still important for the overall game. It can mean you fail your midterms, requiring you to take remedial classes, missing your sports classes or sports club activities and be kicked out of them, and then you have no chance left to get with the sporty girl. Trust us, this is a complicated strategy game. So, for something that is not involving combat at all, this game is surprisingly high in the RPG elements, with the end goal not beating an enemy, but getting a confession from a girl you've been pursuing throughout your high school years.
Yes, Tokimeki Memorial was pretty much a huge success. It was sold 1.1 million copies by 1996, so that's 2 years after the original release and 1 year after the PlayStation release. Japanese magazine Famitsu's reader even voted it the 23rd favorite video games of all time in 2006. That's 12 years after first being released. The game was so successful that after the PlayStation release, they ported it to everything they could. Sega Saturn, PC, I think it was Windows 95, but not really popular. I'm not surprised really. But also SNES, Super Nintendo. Yeah, it's a bit weird because it was actually back ported to SNES in 1996, which you don't really hear for any other games being back ported like that. Understandably, though, they had to cut down on the quality of graphic and also removing some of the voice acting on the SNES version. I guess that's not surprising. Other than that, they also released many spin offs. I just want to highlight a few. The first one that I want to touch on is actually this drama series developed for both PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Consisted of three games that are a lot more linear and more like visual novels, I guess you can say, rather than the dating sims. What's interesting about them is that the game was actually developed under Hideo Kojima, the Metal Gear man himself.
The Metal Gear Man himself? No way.
Yeah, he's definitely not the writer of the series though, but he directed the game. He also used Polysnot's engine to create the drama series, so that's quite obvious, basically, that it had Hideo Kojima mark in it. And also, they had a few Easter eggs inside the games themselves. So, next time you play Death Stranding, just remember he also directed a dating sim spin off that was also quite popular. The second spin off that I want to highlight is an arcade version of the game. It was called Tokimeki Oshiete Your Heart. This one is definitely interesting because not only you try to win your romantic interest attention quicker, of course, it's an arcade, so you have to speed it up, but it also features a Tokimeki sensor, which is a device looking like a computer mouse where it can detect your heartbeat and sweat level. Basically, in the game, if you say you're happy to meet a certain girl in the game, but your heartbeat doesn't seem too excited, the machine will think you're lying. I feel like that definitely sounds really tough. I mean, how would you portray your in game feeling in real life? It's just, I don't know how to do that. But yeah, anyway, at the end of the game, if you've managed to achieve the objective, you'll get a printed postcard. Although this was later changed in the Plus version, where you get a printed sticker instead of a postcard. So that's pretty neat for an arcade game.
It reminds me of Nintendo's love uh, thing that they had. Do you remember they had like this device where I think two people like touch like a sensor and then it reads the compatibility between the two?
Oh my god,
Do you
that
remember this?
must have not been accurate at all.
Yeah, it wasn't. No, of course not.
That sounded terrible. Those weren't the only Tokimeki Memorial spin offs, of course. They went on with more sequels and more spin offs for the sequels as well. But yeah, if you're really interested in this Tokimeki Memorial, I definitely recommend Punchy's video talking about the whole series.
So far, we've been getting a lot of the Bishoujo games more than anything, focusing on playing of a guy character, getting the attention of girls, but dating sims kept expanding to accommodate almost every demographic that existed in this universe. Another notably famous one around the time Tokimeki Memorial was released is a game called Angelique. Angelique was considered the first of its kind, an otome game where the game is intended to be played by women and have a female protagonist as your player character. Your goal is to develop a romantic relationship between your character with other characters who are typically male. In short, otome games are where the girls are trying to get the good looking guys for a change. Angelique was released in 1994 by Koei in Japan for the Super Famicom first, but later ported to just about every console out there. The game was unique as it was created by Ruby Party, an all women division inside of Koei. If Koei sounds familiar to you, it's the company that spawned the Warriors series, as in Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, those games. Before we even touching about the game itself, though, I want to highlight the team behind it. Who is Ruby Party? In 1985, Keiko Erikawa was busy developing games with her husband, Yoichi Erikawa, for the company that they founded together, Keio. She realized that all games seemed to be targeted towards males, and you know what, back then she wouldn't have been wrong, they definitely were. Barely any games for women, and barely any woman ever worked at Keio at the time. Keiko Erikawa pushed for an otome game because girls deserve a game made for them as well. With it being in an uncharted territory, though, she pushed for a mixed media approach, planning drama CDs and manga alongside the game as well. And when they released Angelique in 1994, this mixed media approach certainly boosted the popularity of the game too. And just to be clear, Ruby Party was not that's exclusive to women. Yoichi Arikawa and many male staff in KO were also involved in spawning the first Otome game. Yes, the main creative team were always filled with just women, but male developers also helped with the programming, music composition, and planning in general. Ruby Party also coined the term neo romance, which becomes their franchise for the romantic simulations that they make.
So, what's the first Otome game about? How are we supposed to play it? Is it basically just the same thing with Tokimeki Memorial? Well, for a starter, the setting is not really just Japanese high school with this one. The story is set in faraway sacred bird cosmos, ruled and protected by a queen. One day, the queen wanted to pick a successor, so she personally picked two girls from Simolny Girls' Academy to be brought to the Holy Land, where she can test them and pick one of the two. You play as Angelique Limoges, who is considered the weaker candidate compared to the more experienced Rosalia de Cartagena, but Angelique actually holds potential. Whoever will be chosen to be the queen in the end needs to be trusted as a capable queen who's able to rule and govern by using the power of the nine guardians, reaches the bridging gaps of the two continents. So you need to win the heart of these sacred guardians that basically you can romance. And in the end, whoever is more trustworthy and bringing the two continents together will be deemed as the next queen. As you can tell by this point, though, it sounds quite different than the games we've mentioned before, like Tokimeki Memorial or Dokusei. We're using a lot of European names and themes here. Interestingly, it's actually influenced by Keiko Erikawa herself, who apparently liked to daydream marrying a rich French prince with a white steed when she was young. I think that's pretty sweet. But anyway, she got married with Yoichi Arikawa anyway, and together they're probably becoming one of the biggest couple in video games industry. So although not really French, but definitely she got there in the end. And yeah, I guess it's not really surprising that Angelic became popular, proving Keiko Arikawa's point where there's as many girls as boys out there, they deserve their game too. It also spawned many sequels and spin offs, with the latest being released as recent as 2021 for the Nintendo Switch, and it was called Angelique Luminaries. From what I know, I think all the Angelique games have never been released outside Japan and in language that's not Japanese. The only exception I know was a translation for Chinese for their first game, and that's only for the PC port. So I'm not too surprised if it never really reached the Western market, to be honest. But yeah, it's not because Koei is opposed to the idea of releasing the game in other languages, but they made an argument that demands must be shown for them to spend that effort. This got us questioning though, is the demand of dating sims only exist in Japan? Most of these games we've talked about have never received an English translation in the first place. Is this a genre that gamers in the West are completely immune to? Probably.
By this point, I think you can see, Player One, how many of these dating sims have RPG elements to them, and of course, RPGs are also very popular in the West. Let's take Harvest Moon, for example, which is mainly a farm simulation, but this game was released in Japan first in 1996, and then in North America the following year in 97, before reaching Europe yet another year later in 98. See, things weren't moving so fast as they do these days. So in Harvest Moon, not only are you clearing lands, planting crops, selling harvests, raising livestock, you can also romance characters in the game. Harvest Moon was certainly not the first one, as games like Girl's Garden from as early as 1984 already had like a kind of farming and dating element within the game, without it being a dating simulator per se. The story revolves around a girl gathering flowers to get the attention of a crush. Another one is the Persona series, where in Persona 3 and Persona 4, you also can get elements of dating sims within the game. Don't get us wrong, gamers in the West love the weird dating sims. Well, let's explore some that's absolutely quite a big hit in the West for dating sims standards. To establish this from the start, you could say these games are a little bit more visual novelish in style rather than the heavy RPG Tokimeki Memorial style. So keep in mind that Although a lot of the choices you make still make a big difference in these games, making them still legit in the dating sims category as well. So first one, let's hit it hard with Panzermandold, Tank Dating Simulator. Yeah, you heard that right. So you play as Erwin Lemore, who is an American with German background, who was supposed to join a tank school to learn about tanks, but ended up joining a tank school instead, where it's full of tanks that take the form of Japanese schoolgirls. You can end up dating the mighty and feisty Soviet tank T-34, the American M4 Sherman, the German Panzer IV, or the scarily psychotic Soviet IS-2. If you haven't caught the drift so far, this game is actually teaching a lot of historical World War II metaphors throughout, including your own character name, Erwin Lemore, with Lemore is Rommel spelled backwards. Erwin Rommel was a German field marshal during the Second World War, serving in the armed forces of Nazi Germany. Basically, the entire game is like an Easter egg for tanks.
It is, it is.
The game was developed and published by Dev Group P, an American company that also published another game called Attack Helicopter Dating Simulator, where you date attack helicopters with anthropomorphized form of Japanese anime style girls. I mean, of course. What else, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you heard about the tank dating simulator and the attack helicopter one, you might have been thinking, is it all like war related? No, not really. It's not like Western games are obsessed with wars or anything, by the way.
Eh,
Because, to be fair, we also have the popular animal related one called Hatoful Boyfriend. So, to be fair, Hatoful Boyfriend is a visual novel and dating sim developed by manga artist Moa Hato. So, this one was originally Japanese. So it's set in post-apocalyptic world where intelligent birds have become the dominant species. Players take on the role of a human girl, Hiyoko Tosaka, who attends St. Pigeon Nations Institute, a prestigious high school for birds, who somehow also depicted to have an anthropomorphized version of themselves. So they have like a boy manga version of themselves as well, other than the bird version of them. Anyway, it was quite confusing when I played it at first. The gameplay involves choosing which bird to befriend or romance, uncovering quirky personalities and even dark, hidden storyline tied to the apocalypse and genetic experimentation. The story is dark, to be fair. The game was initially created in 2011 as a joke for April Fool's Day, but quickly gained traction for its absolutely absurd premise and unexpectedly emotional narrative depth. Moa Hato expanded it into a full fledged game later that year. The original version was in Japanese, but its unique charm caught the attention of Western fans. So in 2014, a remastered version with English translation was released, published by Devolver Digital. Not only that this version has like English narrative, it also featured improved visuals, new story content, and broadened accessibility to a global audience. When the game was translated into English, it quickly became a cult hit. Critics and players loved it for, just really weird humor overall and pretty much clever writing and somehow quite surprisingly having depth in the story. The story is actually quite deep and pretty dark, but I guess that's the appeal of the game itself. So if you're thinking it's just very absurd concept of a human girl dating pigeons, turn out to be like quite uniquely emotional experience that explored like love, loss, and personal identity kind of question when you play it. Popular gaming outlets like Kotaku and Polygon highlighted it as a standout example of how niche Japanese games could actually appeal to the Western audiences. So yeah, you can see yourself at this point how dating sims seem to be expanding to literally accommodate a very wide demographic. So other than dating birds or tanks or attack helicopters, I have a quick round of other dating games with different themes. The first one is to date celebrities or prominent figures. Who is it that you want? Joe Biden, John Cena, Nicolas Cage, or even Colonel Sanders? They're all out there.
Keanu Reeves?
I need to look for that. But you can also date other animals, not just birds. Do you want to turn your girlfriend into an alpaca?
Yes, no.
Yes, you can play Pucka Plus if you're interested in that. There's also perfect animals if your thing is cats. And third one, the monsters category. You can do Monster Prom and their spin offs. They have Monster Retreat, Monster Camp, Monster Road Trip, and anything that you think of. Another one is Helltaker, where it's basically mostly puzzle game, but it also has like a dating sims element inside it. Or the one that you thought was a dating simulation, but it wasn't, like Doki Doki Literature Club. God, that game was so good.
So good. Definitely my favorite dating sim as well.
I know. To be fair, it's kind of like not a dating sim. It's luring you into getting to know the girls in this school literature club before hitting you hard with horror. I don't know what to say about this one though, but I'm absolutely including this one here.
Yeah, don't say too much about it. All spoiler alert. Just we've
It's
already
so
said
good.
enough. We already said enough. You know what I mean?
I know.
It's cool. Just give this one a try, player one.
Yeah, but I feel like this very small list that I listed just now are actually proof that not all dating sims worth talking about in this episode. Because it's going to be a really long episode if we do that. But I'm saying this not because they're not great or anything, there's just a lot of them.
So we don't really get that pure dating simulation with an emphasis in the word simulation anymore. Yes, the dating elements that you can get in games like The Sims 4 or Stardew Valley are definitely pretty valid to fill in the gap we have in modern gaming, but gone are the days where, like in Tokimeki Memorial, the goal is that dating element itself, with the goal of getting a love confession. We're still enjoying the dating sims elements that are included as a minigame within bigger games like in Yakuza or the Judgment series, for example, because they're pretty fun. And even though we're not the type of people who play dating sims as a standalone game, we'd certainly welcome a refresh in this genre, I think. We get it, there's so much more that we can talk about around this genre, but I hope this episode has given you a glimpse into the history of dating sims. So I hope it's been a fun date with us today, player one. But what about you? Do you have any favorite in dating sims genres that we haven't mentioned? And what must I say to improve my attraction points with you?
Well, that's not for the episode, is it? But anyway, please let us know what you think by dropping us a message on our website, gaminghistory.club. Also, remember to check out gaminghistory.club/SNES and enter the competition to get Gaming History Club SNES. It's super easy and you can win this super cool Gaming History Club painted SNES PAL that has been region unlocked, 2 controllers, 2 special games. Honestly, what are you waiting for? Even I'm jealous about this because I will not be the one having this.
I'm hoping nobody gets in touch with us and we get to keep this beauty for
I
ourselves.
know, right?
Yes. The entry to the competition will be closed on the 31st of May, so you still have a lot of time to submit. Get creative, player one. We'll announce the winner on our episode that will be released on the 18th of June.
As usual, new episodes of Gaming History Club are released every other Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe and follow us on our social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook as Gaming History Club.
Come back in a couple of weeks, player one, when we'll have one of our chit chat episodes again. And this time we'll be discussing our top picks for games that almost never came to see the light of day. See ya!